NSFW, what is the craziest thing you witnessed at a party? Halloween house party. Everyone in fancy dress except one guy. Everybody is having a good time until no costume guy goes on a rampage and throws a guy dressed as Shaggy through a ground floor window and just paces around the room like a wild animal looking like he's going to do it again. Everyone's in a state of shock or going out to check on Shaggy. My mate Pete, RIP, calmly folds up a chair and smashes the guy over the back with it WWE style and then threw him out. A guy dressed as Spider-Man was later found asleep in the toilet with a toothbrush hanging out of his ass. There's a certain club in Berlin. If you go to the men's bathroom you're almost certainly going to run into this one guy who's been there for years, who will beg you and other random men to PSS on his face. And thank you if you do. He will do it for hours every night. He is pretty polite and doesn't force you to PSS on him, though he will beg you for it. I've seen a lot of crazy things but this one dude is impossible to forget. Got a gun pointed at my crotch by the girl whose apartment the party was at. She laughed and said it wasn't loaded. Then some guy called her back over to the table where he was sitting. He said, "Give me that," and proceeded to pull out the magazine. I left about then. Guy had a warrant out for his arrest for something stupid. No idea what. He saw flashing lights outside and panicked. He climbed out a tiny bathroom window without telling anyone and spent almost 2 hours on the roof, hiding in case the police came back. It wasn't the police. It was the meter maid checking for parking violations. I once got stabbed in the ducking chest at a party. This guy had a ceramic plate of wings, was drunk, and I accidentally bumped into him, dropping his wings and plate. He got so ducking mad he picked up a shard of the plate and stabbed me with it. I ended up going to the hospital but was mostly okay. An extremely drunk high guy, I have no idea. He was wobbling around and hallucinating, and he made my bed. I watched, also fairly drunk, from the corner of my room, as he fell on top of it over and over while attaching the sheets and tucking them under the mattress. Guy's mother must have drilled some crazy sense of duty into him. Guy showed up with a duck on a leash. Ducking wild man. I opened the wrong door and witnessed a girl start to vomit on my friend's DCK as she was sucking it. That's what you get for not knocking. A very fat friend of mine was extremely drunk and said I'm gonna do a flip. And did a complete front flip, landing on a plastic chair, which broke and sliced his arm open. I went to a college Halloween party about 8 years ago. Theirs was this dude dressed up in a pink gorilla costume just going ham. Life of the party. Dude went a little too hard. He ended up throwing up directly into his gorilla mask while wearing it, and then followed it up by power yeeting himself down the stairs. An ambulance came for him and we saw him again the next morning when he returned as a regular colored human and a cast on his leg. Guy tried to kill himself in the bathroom tub by slashing his wrists. It was a smallish party in an apartment with one bathroom so people had to pee, so thankfully they got to him in time. We broke down the door when he finally said what he was doing and called an ambulance. He lived. Also went to a psych ward for a few weeks after this. Hosted a party once and stayed sober so my house wouldn't turn into a wreck. Walked into my room and saw the biggest guy in my class, bodybuilding kind of big, drunk AF sitting on my bed watching reruns of SpongeBob SquarePants and eating nachos. Then looked at me dead in the eye and said, "What? It's a good show. Edit." Well, I once cooked some burgers for a party and after eating one the host had a heart attack. I call the recipe I use heart attack burgers now. Semicolon. I went to a house party that got out of control. I was part of the clearing out squad and I found a very coked up dude in the bathroom washing his face in the sink which appeared to filled with blood. Like horror movie levels of blood. Apparently he was punched in the face by somebody with a big ring which had sliced his nose. Essentially. Off. I will never forget him stuperously turning towards me to say something and his nose following his head on a 2-second delay like a door on a hinge. He looked like Red Skull from the Marvel movies. Drinking with a bunch of friends. One guy's is smashed and spills his full drink all over the floor. He grabs the mop from the closet and starts mopping it up while the rest of us give him a hard time for wasting alcohol. Deadpan takes the mop, lifts it above his head and wrings it out into his mouth. A rando who wound up at a house party asked a couple people if they had heroin. And after we kicked him out he came back to the smokers area in the alley out back and tried to physically carry a drunk girl off down the back alley. We intervened and got her inside and safe. But that was pretty ducking crazy. My friend's older brother Tim showed up uninvited. All night he kept asking everyone if they had seen his twin sister. She's here somewhere. I thought it was a little weird because he doesn't have a twin sister, but I shrugged it off. There was probably 80-100 people there. All night. He makes it a point to ask each and every group, each and every single person, if they had seen his twin sister. He can't find her. Around 1 AM. In one swift movement, he tucks his wiener between his legs, drops his pants to his ankles, kills the stereo and starts screaming twin sister, twin sister, while quickly shuffling all through the party. Good job, Tim. A girl once lectured me about how dangerous cannabis is after she had just done a line of my coke. Went to some girl's house party who made the mistake of saying, when everyone was robbing her dad's stuff, okay, everyone can take just one item. Obviously that didn't go well. Her house got obliterated. She got kicked out by her parents not long after the party and ended up on heroin. Very sad story and nobody knows for 100% certain, but whenever we reminisce about it, my friends and I are pretty sure it's that house party that sparked her downward spiral. She was a well-educated girl and quite well off before that situation happened. She also ended up on Kilroy, an old British talk show, talking about the dangers of heroin and homelessness years later. Drunk girl tossing a beer bottle over her shoulder blindly into a crowd at a beer festival after my buddy told her to throw it away, meaning a recycling bin 5 feet from her. I walked into a literal duck pile once. Judging by the amount of limbs, there were at least 5 people in it, with another 6 smoking pot and drinking booze sitting around the pile like it was a weird bonfire. Edit. So this doubled my karma in one go. And my first medals as well. Did you get to roast a weenie? My first ever week at uni, a guy in our flat passed out in his boxers and socks after swigging tequila and Southern Comfort straight from the bottle for an hour. He was fully gone and couldn't even stand or drink water. We put him to bed. Then not 10 minutes later he knocked at my door fully dressed and apologized for the incident yesterday and said he'd be more careful with his drinking. Just the speed of his recovery was honestly completely crazy. He did then disappear all night as far as I'm aware, but it remains a mystery to me what happened. Cocaine happened. A girl I know broke up with her boyfriend at a party. He was so mad and drunk that he took both his hands and formed a hammer and smashed through a windows. Next thing you know, he is on his knees, piecing blood, with both of his arteries severed. One dude that kept his tea together tid his shirt apart and tied both his arms and carried him like a potato sack in his car and flew to the hospital. He saved his life in front of our eyes. We were like 20 people who saw this, and nobody but this guy did anything. We all stood there like idiots. Good thing the dude had a flying car handy. The girl I was seeing sucking off another guy in my bathroom at my going away party right before I moved. Host and their boyfriend having sex in the middle of the room and everyone else just sitting around watching TV and not really that bothered. A car of girls showed up who knew this one girl at the party already. They had been partying elsewhere earlier and fairly hard too. By the time they get to our party, one girl is so drunk she's tea in the back of her friend's car and passed out. Girls do indeed poop and can ruin the back of a Toyota Corolla. It was a nice car. I remember being at a party and pointing out to a friend how clean a glass door was that it didn't even look like a door was there. Not even 2 minutes later a guy dove through the door thinking there wasn't a door there. Blood everywhere. Stitches were needed but he just rinsed himself off at the sink. threw some duct tape on the wounds, and partied on. I was in a band. The crowd was invited to the after party for a show. The guitarist was pretty interesting. He invites two chicks that are friends to wrestle in a kiddie pool full of vegetable oil. I had been in a committed relationship for a couple years at this point. Still wanted to watch, but was not wanting to be disloyal. So the crowd is watching the two girls go at it. I watch until their tops come off. Then exit the party. I see a very sad looking kid, maybe 12 or 13 years old, standing outside. Remembering being that age and feeling bad, I say, "Hey, kid, why so sad? You should go into the party. There's two chicks wrestling with their boobs hanging out." "That's my sister," he said. I felt so awful. Ended up hanging out with him to try to make him feel better. It was towards the end of the night and one guy was asleep on a living room chair, legs over one arm and leaning back against the other arm. He woke up just as he was about to vomit and his friend literally dove in to catch the vomit with his hands. We didn't want to mess the house being underage drinkers. That wasn't the crazy bit though. Sleepy guy had caught his own vomit in his hand and said it's okay. I got this and scooped it back into his mouth. Swallowed it. Then went back to sleep. It's been over 10 years since it happened and I will never forget watching that. How can I forget reading this? Roommate came home from a Halloween party and said, "You'll ever believe this. I passed out and up to a chick in a Scream, the movie, costume. Sucking my DCK. Full stop. I thought for a minute and said, how could you tell it was a chick? Full stop. He got a panicked look on his face and swore me to secrecy immediately." Towards the end when maybe half the people had left, I was sitting on the couch on my phone and I hear someone shouting, "Loser gets stabbed. Loser gets stabbed." I look up to see one guy holding a knife in the air in one hand and his other holding another guy by his shirt collar and he's got this devilish smile. And the other guy is just standing there with an OST look on his face but not trying to stop it. It was like a movie scene. Not me personally, but my brother with some friends were having a garden party late into the night. Other two friends were supposed to arrive later. So my brother sees headlights from car and two people coming to garden. It was midnight maybe, but it was dark. So he grabbed some bread they had for BBQ, rolled it into balls and went on to surprise the guys. He jumped out of nowhere in the dark, throwing the bread and yelling. Well, in next few seconds he was laying on the ground, face down with knee on his back. Police arrived because neighbors called them to calm the noise. Anyways, he explained everything and it ended peacefully. Fun story. I was in a campground party during tree planting. A few people had done mushrooms and I got stuck babysitting one of them. I was pretty annoyed, but after a while he was doing better, so I went to go take a PSS and I heard this loud noise and my first thought in the woods is bear. I keep the stream going listening intently and realize it's snoring. Holy shit, I think the guy in the next campsite is ducking loud. Whatever though, I zip up and walk back to the fire. Mushroom guy is good but someone is missing. Where's James? They say he went to bed. Something clicks. No way. I go back to the ditch where I had just pissed. Kick James awake and take him back to his van. Then I sprint back to the fire and immediately tell everyone James passed out in the ditch and I had just pissed all over him. There was this massive party which was heavily talked about on Facebook, which meant that loads of random people showed up. One of these people was a shady drug dealer who was sat in the corner dealing. This girl went up and started giving him loads of shitty drugs are bad and all that. The dealer punched her in the face in front of the whole party. A few guys jumped up to fight him, but the dealer pulled a gun and exited with his group, pointing it around the room. They all got in a car and began to drive off. As they were pulling out, this guy Steve, who had missed all of this happening and only knew that there was some kind of altercation which resulting in some guys leaving, came bursting out of the kitchen with a fork in his hand. He ran out the front of the house and hurled the fork at the car, bouncing it off the rear window, and shouted, "And don't come back." Luckily the car didn't stop. Watched a hot Asian girl just hike up her skirt and start finger blasting herself in the living room at a college party. TBH, as a 19-year-old student I watched for a solid 3-4 minutes before I mentioned it to another girl and she took her away. We got so drunk once we took turns vomiting in a hollowed out stump in the backyard until it was full. That's absolutely disgusting. A slice of pizza stuck to a cupboard. Just chilling. Defying gravity. I accidentally threw an orgy in uni. Theme was bare as you dare and I put a bowl of condoms and lube in the hallway so it was the first thing people saw when they walked in. It was meant to be funny. Turns out you get a bunch of people naked and drunk and give them protection. They will duck. Everywhere. Party was fun but the cleanup job next day. Work. You didn't think this would turn into an orgy? Field party. When I was in high school there was a loud cheer going on about 50 feet away. Instantly I figured two drunks fighting. Wandered over and some girl was lying on her back with her skirt hiked right up and some dude's face was buried deep into her. Even with the cheering and hollering he kept going and she didn't care that everyone was watching. Wandered off during a field party to smoke once and just heard my friend say sir. He and his lady friend had snuck off into the bushes for canoodling purposes and I had nearly stepped on them. I saw a very drunk woman shoot dill pickles across the kitchen. Without using her hands. Yes. Like that. Kicking pickles across the kitchen isn't very impressive. One of my gay friends invited me to a party at his place. Shortly after the party began there was a gay orgy starting up. Being the only straight person I got some cocktails his partner made me and waited by the pool while eating snacks. Apparently, the two people that started the orgy were both ex-PRN stars from CA living in PA. It was one of the most fun parties I've been to. Walked in on a 4-person gangbang on my then friend at the time. Had a falling out 2 years later because she turned into a huge enabling alcoholic. It was happening in the second lounge and I needed to grab my phone from there so I just walked past it all. Gave her the thumbs up while she had 3 guys deep in her guts and 1 in her hand. Got a thumbs up back from her free hand. And left the room. I miss that house. Saw a guy stab his thigh with a butcher knife after claiming his pain threshold is legendary. His cries and screams to follow were legendary. Watched a girl shoot heroin between her toes. Watched her turn blue and go unconscious. Then die. No one would let me call 911. Watched her boyfriend literally beat her chest as hard as he could. Over and over. Until by some ducking miracle. She came back. I don't talk to any of these people anymore. Edit. Holy shit. I've never gotten 1k on anything. Thank you for the award, S, as well. I got to a Halloween party once. I saw a girl dressed up as Katana from Mortal Kombat and I was stoked because I was dressed up as Scorpion. I did the get over here while pointing at her to try and break the ice and she said, I have a boyfriend. My wife was standing right next to me. Buddy got his DCK stuck in a glass bottle. We had to get a whole stick of butter to lube him up out of it but he kept getting hard. I was at a Halloween party and this dude dressed as Joker smashed a back windshield in. Then this guy dressed as Batman was asking everyone who broke his windshield. They were roommates. A friend's birthday party. House full of people. We all got really drunk and really high. At some point this girl shoves all the chips and solo cups off of this folding table and gets on top. Begins to strip while she dances. Whatever. We all have no shame or care. We cheer her on. She gets down to just her thong. And she says the immortal last words. Watch this. Not sure what was supposed to happen because suddenly the folding table folded down to the floor and there she went. She had to have bumped her head on both walls and the floor. She popped up like nothing happened and eventually made it to her room with some dude and another girl to have a threesome while the party continued. The next morning as we all wake up from wherever we passed out, she somehow couldn't find any of her clothes and left. Naked. With a black eye. At a graduation party for my friend. His mom was super drunk. His spidey senses must have been tingling because he was going crazy looking everywhere for his mom. He eventually found her in the shower banging a friend of his. He was not happy and neither were the parents who also attended the grad party. Two guys had found some metal implements for branding cattle. Heated them up on the stove and branded each other on the calf. Host shut the party down an hour or two later. While high on the molly, he went room to room shirtless, brandishing two hatchets, telling everyone how much he loved them. But they had to get out of his house now. This was in high school. High school. There was this ridiculously religious girl that was an OSX till marriage type. But she was always down for butt stuff. At a party, everybody's drunk. She's getting her ass railed on the front lawn. Her parents showed up to take her home. P said as could be that she lied about where she was. Walked right up to the show. Show ensued. A girl knocking herself unconscious on the edge of the sink whilst in the middle of threesome. Scariest moment of my life. At a party that wasn't supposed to be any kind of SX party. Sitting in hot tub with everyone and a girl on the other side sharks over. Pushed the lag of my trunks up and started blowing me in front of everyone. About 5 minutes into it, I look over and my buddy, who was sitting there next to me, has his hand on the back of her hair doing the old up and down. Everyone just kind of looked for a second and then went about what they were doing. I think I seemed to be the most freaked out person about the entire situation. I was looking for a place to charge my phone when I walked in on what looked like a shooting for a PH community video. With a vidcam on a tripod and floodlights. There were a couple in there making out. So they didn't start anything yet. I quietly closed the door and he made sure to knock on the next door. Okay. First you shoot the tequila. Okay. Done. Then you snort the salt. Okay. At a bonfire. A couple dudes disappeared from the fire and came back with a mailbox. With the post still attached. And just threw it onto the fire. Then someone put a door in the fire, which was supposed to be burned because it was old or something, and the same guy ended up stripping all his clothing off and running over the burning door. Completely naked.